Welcome back to Daily Verse Devotion. Before the world was formed, before Eden felt the wind, there was a silence no one speaks of. It begins not with light, but with a question, one that still echoes through the dark. Can a fallen one ever return? The answer, it seems, has a name, Namtale. He once stood among the angels, scribe of the Most High, before his steps slipped into shadow alongside Lucifer. But unlike the others, he came back. Not with songs, not with glory, but with something sealed, too terrible to name, too sacred to discard. They say it was hidden before humans ever drew breath, and now it waits again, unread. What would heaven do with one who once chose silence over loyalty? And why was he not destroyed? There are no verses that mention him. No scroll that dares record his return. Only fragments passed in forgotten whispers, like an ember glowing under ash. You can almost feel the stillness around his name, like air just before thunder cracks. But what did he see in the abyss, and what did he bring back? This story may not shout, but it lingers, and if you listen closely, it may speak. If this is your first time here, welcome. We explore truths not often told. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share. Someone you know may need this story more than you think. Now let's open the first seal. Namtale, the scribe of God. They all had roles. Michael defended, Gabriel proclaimed. But one angel was not made to lead or speak. Namtale observed. He sat in the quiet margins of eternity, where time curved and memory was thick like oil. He was the one who wrote what even heaven feared to forget. Moments, intentions, unspoken patterns hidden behind creation. Namtale did not fight. He didn't shout truth into chaos. He listened. He recorded. He remembered what others ignored. They called him Watcher of the Scrolls. His task wasn't glorious, but it was sacred. He could see futures unraveling before they happened. He knew when grief would bloom in a place that hadn't yet known loss. But he was not permitted to warn or to mend, only to bear witness. What does it do to a being, seeing tragedy coming, but being commanded to stay silent? He was precise, steady, but he noticed too much. A star dimming too soon, a tear on the face of an angel who hadn't yet fallen. He was drawn to beauty, not just in light, but in decay. And one day, as the archives glowed with candlelight, a voice spoke, not from the throne, but from a shadowed corner. Why only right? Don't you want to know why it breaks? It wasn't a roar. It was almost gentle. And in that moment, the light around him changed, warm but tinged with something unclean. Namtale's hand hovered above the parchment, but the scroll remained untouched. Was it disobedience, or was it empathy slipping past the line? He didn't answer, but he listened. Perhaps rebellion doesn't begin with defiance. Perhaps it begins with a question. And once a question takes root, can even heaven pull it back? Namtale, the angel torn between light and darkness. Rebellion didn't erupt all at once. It cracked first in silence, between one breath and the next. While armies were gathering and lines were being drawn, Namtale stood still. Not in loyalty, not in betrayal, just still. He did not raise a weapon. He did not stand against the throne, but he also did not stand with it. What happens to those who remain unmoved, not out of pride, but from being split in half? Namtael did not fall in fire or fury. He drifted, as if a thread came loose inside him and could not be rewoven. There was no shout, no great flash, only a soft departure, almost unnoticed. One moment he stood among the holy, The next, he was gone, cup scroll still in hand. He didn't weep, but he didn't sing either. He walked into the shadows like a man who knew better, but didn't know what else to do. Why does silence look like agreement, even when the heart is broken? In the records of the fall, Namtale is numbered among the traitors. But even in the depths, he never spoke like one. He didn't conspire. He didn't crown himself a king. He just watched the others revel in ruin, watched beauty torn for pleasure, watched the scroll at his side grow dim. Some say he stayed too long between heaven and abyss, long enough to see the fracture, but not long enough to find the answer. He didn't fall like Lucifer. He didn't rise like Michael. He hovered, and in that hovering he became something not yet named. Perhaps the line between loyalty and failure isn't a wall, but a blur, and in that blur, he disappeared. The abyss, not hell. Namtale did not fall into flame. He wasn't cast into the pit where wrath burns and demons roar. He descended into something quieter. Darker, yes, but not loud. A realm without edges, a depth without time. They call it the abyss. Not hell, not Sheol, not Gehenna. This place isn't for punishment. It's for distortion. Here, time doesn't move. It folds. Memories don't replay, they fracture. Regret doesn't scream. It settles like dust in the lungs. Some say it was carved before Eden. Others believe it's where unfinished intentions are locked away. Too dangerous for heaven, too strange for earth. Namtale arrived with the scroll still clutched to his chest. But when he opened it, something was wrong. The ink shimmered, then bled, then vanished. Words refused to stay on the page. What happens when a place unravels even truth? Around him were others. Watchers, once like him, sentinels of divine memory. Now bound, faces turned to the earth, chained not by metal but by what they had seen. They had known too much. They had lingered too long near forbidden knowledge. And the abyss welcomed them, not as guests, but as records to be erased. Namtale was not chained, but the silence weighed heavier than shackles. He tried to write, again and again. But the scroll only absorbed ink like sand swallowing water. No line would hold, no word would root. Have you ever entered a place so unspoken it forgets your name while you're still breathing? Light here did not illuminate. It pulsed, dim, unreliable, like memory flickering before it dies. Namtale sat in that half-light, scroll on his lap, and whispered, "If even truth dissolves here, what remains of obedience?" The voice across the veil. In the depths where light forgets its name, Namtale sat with the scroll across his lap. Its surface had faded, its seals cracked. But he had not let go. He didn't speak. He had long learned that words held weight in places like this. Even thought echoed too loudly. So he waited. Then came the voice, not from above, not from within, but from beyond. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't a whisper. It was the kind of question that moves through bone before reaching the ears. Why do you still carry the scroll? Namtale didn't answer right away. He touched the binding, warm, as if the scroll remembered something he had forgotten. And then he said, "If I don't hold on to truth, it disappears." The air thickened, like fog folding in on itself. And then, without warning, the veil trembled. What Namtale saw wasn't a dream. It was a fracture in time, a glimpse into a war not yet spoken, beyond Michael's trumpet, beyond Lucifer's fall. It wasn't fire or fury. It was silence cracking open like old stone. And names not yet written, began to stir. Can knowledge become a burden heavier than disobedience? The scroll pulsed. No longer a record, not prophecy, but something else entirely. A weapon carved in silence, laced with warnings not for enemies, but for allies who may forget where they stand. Namtale did not weep, but his hands shook when he closed it. Even truth, when seen too early, can blind. Some say the scroll began glowing faintly after that. Others believe it burned in patterns no one could read. But this much is clear. It had changed. And so had he. Namtale, the return to heaven. No lightning split the sky. No voice from on high summoned him. Namtale simply walked. Not with defiance. Not with despair. Just with purpose. Out of the abyss, through veils of smoke and fractured light, he made his way toward the gates. He didn't beg. He didn't plead for pardon. He didn't cloak himself in shame or silence. He walked. What kind of courage does it take to return to the place you once abandoned? At heaven's threshold, the wind shifted. The stones beneath him remembered his former radiance. The air shimmered, as if uncertain how to receive him. Then the seraphim appeared, flames rising from their wings, swords lit with judgment. They blocked his path with holy fire. But Namtale did not flinch. He dropped to one knee, not in surrender, in reverence. Michael descended, not as a brother, not yet, but as heaven's protector. His question was simple. Why return? Namtale looked up. The scroll was still bound to his side, dim but pulsing. And he said, "What I carry doesn't belong to hell, and it cannot remain with me." The silence fell, thick and still, like the pause before thunder. The flaming blades did not lower, but they did not strike. What does heaven do with one who has touched shadow but never let go of truth? Namtale stood not with pride, but with weight. His robes still bore the dust of forgotten places. His eyes held something older than memory. Some say the light around him didn't return. Not fully, but neither did it reject him. Perhaps this is what mercy looks like. Not an open door, but the chance to knock. Namtale, before the throne, there are places where even angels tremble. The throne is one of them, not because of thunder, but because of silence that judges before words are spoken. According to Enoch, any being who approached the throne after rebellion was undone, not punished, erased. Their names lost like ink washed from stone. And yet, Namtale stepped forward. He did not raise his voice. He did not lift the scroll. He simply stood. What kind of truth could survive that kind of nearness? The room was light, but not warmth. It stung like memory that hadn't healed. Wings from every order surrounded the chamber. And still, no one moved. Namtale's feet pressed into sacred floor. The scroll at his side glowed dimly, quiet, as if respecting the weight of that place. He did not read it. Instead, he looked toward the throne and said, "This should not be known, but must not be forgotten." No trumpet sounded. No word came back, but light trembled around him, like a breath being held too long. Why allow someone to speak if what they carry must remain sealed? Theories rose like smoke among the angels. Some say the scroll warned of a second rebellion, one not of rage, but apathy. Others whisper it named those who would fracture heaven from the inside. A few believe it contained what God said to Lucifer before the fall, a sentence that, if spoken again, would undo the stars. Namtale offered no explanation. He simply placed the scroll on the steps and stepped back. Perhaps the greatest warnings are not shouted. They are left in plain sight, sealed not by force, but by the fear of knowing. Silence and judgment. When the scroll was opened, there were no trumpets, no flashes of thunder, only silence, deep and unmoving. For 7 days, heaven did not sing. The stars dimmed, the winds ceased. Even the seraphim folded their wings. Namtale stood beneath the stillness, not glorified, not banished, suspended between two verdicts. Have you ever been in a room where no one dares to breathe? That's what judgment feels like when it's divine. Not loud, not cruel, just absolute. He did not plead. He did not speak. Even his scroll remained closed. Namtale, the one who once wrote the breath of time, now stood wordless at the threshold of eternity. His robes still bore the dust of the abyss. His hands, once steady with ink, trembled ever so slightly. What happens when the one who watched history becomes part of it? On the 5th day, a child angel passed by, too young to understand, but old enough to feel the weight in the air. He looked up and asked, "Why doesn't he leave?" A senior angel answered, "Because only the judged are allowed to go." That response lingered longer than the silence itself. Was God deciding Namtale's fate? Or was heaven waiting for humanity to read the scroll for themselves? What was written there that shook even those who'd never fallen? Namtale did not turn. He did not fall to his knees. He waited, like a statue caught between mercy and memory. The sealed scroll. There are scrolls in heaven, records of creation, decrees yet to come. But there is one scroll no angel reads twice. It was sealed, not just shut, but bound with 7 layers of divine speech. Each layer written in a language so pure it burns thought before it forms. Not metaphor, not symbol, power itself etched into sound. Have you ever heard silence that made your ears ring? This scroll wasn't placed on a shelf. It was hidden where no ray of light can stretch. A chamber even the stars avoid. And one angel guards it, nameless, faceless. Not because of secrecy, but because to name him would summon what he protects. Even the most radiant of angels, Gabriel, Uriel, they've glanced at the scroll's surface and wept for days. Some fasted without knowing why. Others sang without rest, as if trying to drown out something they couldn't name. Why does truth frighten even those made of light? What memory is so dangerous that even heaven dares not remember? Namtale once said, "It's not prophecy anymore, it's preserved wrath." This is not a scroll of events. It holds consequences, should they be forgotten. Judgment sealed in script. Heaven's last resort. It is said only one can unseal it. And he will do so, not on a day, but the day. The end that ends all days. When rebellion is no longer an idea, but a presence in the holy places. And on that day, the scroll will not be read aloud. It will be lived. The weight of knowing. They say some truths are too heavy to speak aloud. Namtale carries one of them. There are no chains around his wrists. No sentence carved into stone. But he walks as if burdened by something unseen. He was shown a name. Not in thunder, not in fire, but in a whisper that burned hotter than flame. The name of the one who, in the final hour, will betray heaven. What would you do if you saw the face of future treachery and had to stay silent? Namtale doesn't speak of it. Not to Michael, not even in prayer. He watches, he listens, And each time an angel lifts their eyes to sing, he wonders if it's them. That's the cruelty of foresight. It doesn't grant control. It only sharpens the ache of helplessness. He walks through heaven as if moving through a fog. The scent of burning myrrh clings to his cloak, sweet, bitter, impossible to forget. And when other angels greet him, they see the same face, but not the same eyes, because Namtael's eyes hold the weight of thunder kept quiet. Have you ever looked at someone and asked, "Will you someday destroy what you love today?" That question has no rest. It coils in his chest like a serpent made of memory. He once believed knowledge was a shield. Now he knows some truths are swords, and heaven asked him not to swing. He wasn't given a task. He was given a silence. And silence, in this case, is the holiest torment of all. Namtael, the witness, not the warrior. Some were created to wield swords, others to command armies, raise cities, or tear them down. But Namtael, he was shaped for silence. He never led, never conquered. And yet, his role carried more weight than war itself. He watched, he wrote. While others acted, he remembered. When the sky cracked with thunder, he held his pen steady. What kind of purpose burns quietly, unseen? Once, in the chaos of a rebellion, a seraph asked him, "Why do you only write while angels bleed?" Namtael didn't answer. He just kept writing. It wasn't apathy. It was assignment. Some scrolls predict, some command. His scroll preserved. It locked memory into time, like amber around ash. Can the world still turn without someone to bear witness? Or does forgetting become a kind of second fall? There are whispers in old texts. Not canon, not loud, but steady. They say the final trumpet may never sound. That when the last seal breaks, it will not be a blast, but a breath, a whisper. And that whisper will come from Namtale, not in defiance, not in glory, but in the voice of one who saw it all and spoke only when the silence became unbearable. Why him? Why give knowledge to one who never fought for it? Maybe that's the point. A warrior forgets, a witness remembers. And in the end, it's not the sword that ends the story, it's the sentence. He was never made to rise, but to remain. To see the line no one else saw and stay until the last word. The light in his chamber is always low, like dusk just before nightfall. That's where he waits. Still listening, still holding what he cannot say yet. Namtale, the scroll still remains. Not every battle is won by fire, and not every hero holds a sword. Namtale never roared on the battlefield, never marched beneath banners or shouted in triumph. But when heaven fell silent, when no angel dared speak, he remained, quiet, kneeling, listening. He carried what others could not armor or vengeance, but memory, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that burns inward with quiet flame. What if the greatest trial is not the fall, but the remembering? To carry what others forget, to hold what others bury. Would you dare to keep truth if it cost you everything? Namtael did. Through the abyss, through exile, through judgment, without restoration. The scroll he bore still exists, sealed in 7 layers, hidden where even flame cannot reach. But it has not vanished, and neither has he. They say God chose the wrong angel. How could a recorder bear the secret that ends the world? But maybe God knew. Only a scribe could resist the urge to use it. Namtale now stands between remembrance and eternity. He doesn't sing, doesn't cry, but he watches in silence. The final war may not begin with thunder, but with a breath, a whisper, not born of wrath, but of witness. And when that moment arrives, when the name is spoken and the veil is torn, it won't be Michael's sword that breaks the silence. It will be Namtale's voice, not loud, but eternal. Will you be ready to listen when that whisper comes to you? If this story stirred something deep within, subscribe. There's more yet to be revealed. In the next video, we'll follow the trail of the one named in the scroll, the one destined to spark the final rebellion. Don't miss it.